And then it came back to it like, well, how many hours am I spending on social media? Time with God is the first thing that goes when you're trying to catch up time, because you go to yourself, well, God's always there. I can, I'll do it at lunchtime or whatever. But you're addicted to your phone. I'm addicted to my phone. Everyone's addicted, but to a certain extent, you just need to admit that.
Hello and welcome to Postcards from Antioch. This is the Barton Church podcast that seeks to train, equip and help disciples, members within the church and any listening to grow in their faith. I'm Oz Power, your host today, and we have Ross Lusby with us today. Hello, Ross.
Hello.
Good to have you with us, and we're looking at a big subject, social media.
Social media, back for the second time.
So what was the first podcast you did? Can you remember?
Discipling in the Home.
Yeah.
So being invited back for the second time means I didn't do too much wrong the first time.
That's right. So you've got wisdom that you've already shared, more to come, and this area is also kind of relevant for in the home for many people, but also something that we all engage with the whole time, social media. How do we engage with that? What does the Bible say about engaging with technology in this way? We're going to explore those issues, but maybe we can start by just a little reminder, Ross. I'm on here a lot. You're not as much. Tell us a bit about yourself, what you get up to.
Yep, so I do the youth work at Barton. Been here 8 years. Love doing sport, particularly play football and golf. I love watching sport, particularly Arsenal. Love being outside. I know you're not going to like that one. Love being outside, particularly when it's sunny and hot. If I'm in the ocean or near the ocean or any part of water, that's kind of my happy place. And also you asked me what my favourite phone app was.
Yes, what is your favourite phone app?
Favourite phone app is, other than the Bible app, which you kind of have to
good answer.
Put up the top there. Probably YouTube.
Okay.
Is my favourite app, though eventually it does become my most hated because you kind of realise how much time you've wasted on it. It's okay for a certain amount of time, but then eventually you realise, okay, this is not actually good for you. So, but YouTube's probably my most used.
Okay, that's helpful to know, because we're thinking all about social media, and it'll be helpful maybe just to start by thinking, well, what are we talking about when we say social media? It's a general term. What is social media, and maybe how does this matter in terms of our discipleship?
Yeah, so I think when we think about social media, we can think about so much we can think about, but basically social media is I've got a definition here, is websites and applications that enable us to create and share content or to participate in social networking, which basically means if you've got a phone, you're on social media. So that does include Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, WhatsApp, Snapchat, and even email. So it's not that you can't even say, well, I'm not on social media because I'm not on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram. Yeah. You are, because you're on your emails, which is part of social networking. You might be on Etsy, where you're selling your own stuff. That's a social media because you're creating content and selling content. So that's what we kind of define as social media. And basically, therefore, it's every aspect of our life nearly.
So basically, the smartphone has introduced
basically the
to
smartphone
us
is social media. And it's very hard to get through life on the day-to-day basis without being on it, really.
Yeah. So. Okay, so we've got loads of different platforms, loads of different ways of engaging with social media. Why on earth are we spending a podcast talking about that? What's the link to discipleship, which is what we're passionate about as a church?
Well, as you know, everyone knows, it's so prevalent. Like everyone's got a phone. It's only going to be like this. I don't know how old. Very rarely you're going to find anyone with no phone. You've got the young kids, but even that's getting younger and younger each time. Yeah. You're not getting analog phones anymore. You're always getting smartphones because that's what you basically need to survive through the world. So therefore, it's not going to go. Social media is here to stay. Phones are here to stay for a long time. So therefore, you've got to kind of interact with it. You've got to work out your rhythms to survive it and thrive through it and not let it control you. So it's worth taking time to think about what you do with your social media and what you do with your phone, how it works for your families and how it works for your kids as well. Because if you don't, then it's just going to get, either you're going to ostracize your kids away from everything and they're going to feel like cave people, or you're not going to have no boundaries at all and they're going to be like stuck to the phone and all you're going to see is a glow in their face for all their free time. So you need to wrestle with it and you need to dig deep and work out a rhythm for you and your family.
So I guess any area of life that we are engaging in, we need to look through the lens of what does the Bible say, what does Jesus want, what is for our good. So we're going to explore that together. Yes. And I'm right in saying this isn't the first time you've talked about this subject.
No.
In a seminar training
way.
And so this isn't just a UK issue, is it?
No, there's no UK issue. We was in Zambia, as probably most of you guys know. And I was asked to do a seminar on social media for Zambians. And you'd think, you think it's just a West problem. It's not. It's very much a Zambia problem for the younger generation. And they have different social medias in the sense of what's most prevalent. So Facebook is massive out there for their teenagers. Instagram, TikTok, not as much, where you'll find here in the UK, as you said here, Facebook, the kind of Gen X and the boomers settled on Facebook. Instagram, the millennials set on, and maybe... What what did we work out you are?
Well, I'm just about a millennial. Yeah.
Yeah, depending on what source you look at.
Yeah.
So, but you're on Twitter, though.
I'm on
So a lot of
X.
millennials on X now. Yeah.
I'm on X.
Yeah.
I would often say I don't really engage that much with social media, but WhatsApp technically.
Yeah, so
YouTube.
WhatsApp. So TikTok is obviously where Gen Z have lied, and that's anything. I don't know what age we work that out to be. Was it like 24 or something? And down Gen Z. But you also might find that WhatsApp, especially if you've got kids, which you have, they don't use WhatsApp to text their friends.
No.
They only use their WhatsApp to text their parents and
those
other
older
who are millennials or boomers, and they do all their texting via Snapchat. So again, WhatsApp is a millennial app. Snapchat is a Gen Z app, even though I've had Snapchat before, way before it became cool.
Yeah.
But obviously,
that's really interesting. Yeah. So we're saying that as well as social media apps being out there, people of a certain age will engage with some and not others. So we're almost living we're communicating with different formats. Yeah. So gone are the days of most people sending emails to communicate.
Yeah, well, that's the problem. Like, boomers and millennials, emails are very prevalent, mainly because of the work side of things. Yeah. Emails are still one of the most used things. But it tends to be that so like for TikTok, for example, every young person's in it at the moment, but eventually older people will get onto it, parents will get onto it, and it's like this theory is like once the grandparents jump onto that social media, then the youngest generation that kind of started it kind of move on to a new one.
And I would say in the past 10 years that I've been a pastor here at Barton Church, I did a lot of my planning and arranging and communicating cross-church via emails in the first 5 years. Yeah. The last 5, that has shifted to WhatsApp and text messages. Probably text message and WhatsApp at first, and now all WhatsApp. And there'll be some staff members that are employed that have a work email that I might email, but I know I won't get much response. Whereas if I message them, I will. And so it's means of communication. Actually, it's understanding where we... feel comfortable to communicate, what platforms we're on. So that's just for life, let alone...
Yeah, and I suppose also we got our own convenience. We've got our own time scale and what we need to get done. And then so we WhatsApp someone because we know that they're never too far away from their phone. Notification's going to ping up. We know it's going to give them get the attention of them straight away. And we're always, even though we are trying to we're talking about podcasts and how to use it well, also on social media, we are still the ones that will still be getting and you might get frustrated with your kids because they're always on their phone, but you'll soon be frustrated with them if you text them and they don't reply back straight away. So it's kind of this catch-22 all the time. We want our kids to not always be on their phones or whoever it might be. We want people off their phones. But actually, when we want their attention, we get annoyed when they're not on their phones. Yeah. So it's kind of this catch-22 constantly at the moment.
So let's explore that a little bit further. Yeah. What are the pros and cons of social media? Is it, you've already hinted that it's going to be really hard to say, I'm just not going to engage in that. And even if we said that, if we've got a smartphone, we are. Yeah. So what are the advantages? And then maybe let's pick apart some of the issues that you've observed in your youth ministry, but socially speaking in a wider scale as well.
Yeah, I think we have to, again, when we're talking about in the context of like being the youth worker, I've got parents on one side trying to get me on their team, and I've got young people on the other side and they're trying to get me on their team. So young people say, Ross, my mum and dad are this, and then they'll get the parents say, Ross, my kid this. And I think, we are stepping constantly into a new kind of way of life, but that was the exact same thing that your parents and my parents had to go through when, I don't know, we had MSN or MySpace or whatever it might be. Like every generation has the same pressures, but it just is in a different form. It just, I think this is a little bit more intense than previous years. So yeah, in that sense, you have to, for parents wise, the pros and cons of it. Well, first of all, parents, it's the same situation you guys were in. But it's just in a different format. So you can't look back and say, well, when I was a kid, that's the best. Those were so much better than the days that you're
read my book.
I've read my book.
People in the park.
Oh, I walked the streets. I used to go out for hours and hours and hours, and my parents didn't care where I was. And now it's but then it doesn't work like that today. So you can't really. It's not good to compare your upbringing to the upbringing that you're bringing your kids, because it's totally different context. Because unfortunately, social media is the young person's reality. You can't take them away from it. You might be able to do it when you get home, but when you go to school, everything is smart. Everything is cashless. Everything, smart boards, iPads, laptops. There's reason why young people's handwritings are not the greatest these days, is because it's all smart. So you can't really hide your young people away from it. I suppose pros and cons we can get. I suppose the first one of the pros, we said it does keep you connected with what's going on. Yeah. The problem is how deep does that connection go? Yeah. So you've got, imagine if you're at school or whatever it might be, or the office, we're at the office here, and all of us are upstairs and we're all chatting away and we're laughing and stuff, and you're down here and you're not kind of involved in that conversation, but you want to be. It's not a nice feeling. So if you can imagine it for your young person, if they're at school in a physical place, they've got their friendship group, they're all laughing, giggling, having fun, but you're not included in that for whatever reason, that's going to be quite isolating. So having social media does allow your young person to keep up to date with what's going on. But the con on that is it does keep them connected, but there's no depth to the connection. So you've got a very wide breadth of people, and the amount of people you've got to try and keep up with as well. Like if you think Snapchat streaks, you got this constant, thing of like, okay, I need to keep up with these Snapchat streaks. How deep are those conversations? They're not deep at all. They're just going to be a very superficial level. And because you've got so many people to keep up to date with, you can't really go deep with any. So you might be able to, if you only had 3 or 4 people on Snapchat, then you're probably able to have loads of conversations with them that goes quite deep. But when you've got
loads and loads,
I don't know how many 50 people on Snapchat going, and then you've got your normal text messages. So I get, I might leave 10 unread WhatsApp messages, and that's because I don't really have time to visit those conversations in a deep way. I can do it superficially, but often those conversations on WhatsApp require a bit more than just a superficial answer. But then what happens is I leave it months and months, and then I make an excuse of why I didn't, reply to them.
So there's a connection that is good.
Yes.
The offset of that is the superficial nature of the relationship, possibly, and the immediacy of the demand of a response. Yeah. So it's that constant simmering anxiety that I need to respond to what's going on to keep up to date. So you might see your young people, if they're on Snapchat, certainly constantly refreshing it, waiting to see if they get a snap, and then they can reply to it instantly. So you're trying to keep on top of the pressure of keeping in touch and connected with everyone. And you might think, well, that's such a sad situation. Well, maybe, but also it's what the young people are in. And you don't want to be, it's like, young people already trying to work out where they are in the world and in their school, and they will feel like they're 5 steps behind if they're not on Snapchat, if they're not keeping up with it. Yeah. And as we said before, Snapchat is how they communicate. Yeah. You might say to your kid, well, why didn't you text them? Why didn't you WhatsApp them? They don't look at their WhatsApps. Yeah. They don't look at their text messages, really. It's only Snapchat. So if you say to your kid, no, you're not having Snapchat, you are saying to them, you're not communicating with your friends to a far extent. So it's a constant trade-offs with social media. You might be protecting your kid from something, but they are missing out on something, and you just have to weigh up. Yeah, how you do that. Okay, that's interesting. Yeah. So we talked about, particularly in mind of teenagers and Snapchat. What are some of the other pros and cons for other listeners beyond that? Yeah, I suppose we're like known as the Google generation now. Millennial. I can just about remember dial-up. Yeah.
So I did have to go through dial-up, and now but then I do kind of remember it not having it. But now we have generations that just know full well.
Wow. Yeah.
Like I know nothing but smartphone, or know nothing but Google. So one of the
4G, 5G is
4G,
just
3G,
normal.
yes, yeah. You know, there's no such thing as like pay as you go these days. It's just like, well, your parents just pay your contract, you know. But I suppose one of the pros is you could say is you got all the information at your disposal. In a way, there's nothing much, you know, that's left unturned now on the internet. If you want to know something, you only have to YouTube it or Google it, and you'll be able.
Or ask chatbot
GPT, and they'll
to do your homework for you.
All your sermons are now done.
Exactly.
Done by chat.
You've realised.
Yeah. I was going to say because it got better, but I'm only joking. So yeah, you got loads of information, so you can't really, you know, your kids got so much information at their hand. But the con of that as well is also and we're not just saying that, we have to be careful. It's not just the young people that are struggling with social media or always on social media. It's us as well. We are using our brains less. We don't need to engage with, like, you know, ciphering through information to get something. Like, we can type in a question in Google and it will literally just give it. So our brains don't need to kind of work as much. But from that, we can get any information that we want. That we like.
So there's an abundance of sermons, of research articles we can read of how to fix your car, cook a dinner.
So you kind of save your money when it's fixed in your car.
Yeah.
Oh, I wish I'd probably, I've been spending my money. Yeah. You know, you could easily YouTube how to fix a car. You know, that does save you money. So there's a pro there. You're saving some money. But then when you're, you know, even university students, or even pastors now using ChatGPT to write their sermons, or certainly, or university students getting their essays done, ChatGPT, or even GCSE, and there's no regulation yet because this technology is coming so quickly, they can't keep up with it.
Yeah, so there's this immediacy, this extent of knowledge, but the key thing, I guess, is then wisely engaging with it, not just engaging with it because of the source and all the rest. So any other pros, cons you want to pull out? I was going to
say, we are able to connect with a wide range of people from across the world, you know, which is great. So I've got friends in, you know, your parents in Zambia, your siblings in Zambia. So, you know, if it was 10 years ago, you might not have been able to do that.
It'd be drop an email, find a time to phone. But now it's
any time you can. And
sending pictures, little videos, amazing.
So you can, you know, and even you probably know that it's quite a shallow level as well. You know, you can't have those deep conversations, but you know, anyone can. You can get a wide range of people that you can, you know, chat to, and be it in a shallow way, but. There's always that everything's shallow when you first meet people. It's then the time after that where it gets a little bit deeper. But I think the problem we're having now, and again, it's not just the young people, it's us as well, is that we are struggling with something called here non-verbal disabled context. So it's communicating with words, you know, quite rightly. It's easy, texting, whatever, voice notes. Voice notes may be a little bit easier. But what problem with that is we're not communicating with our body language, we're not communicating with our facial expressions, our vocal reactions. All these are invisible, and then what that is causing is a slower development in kids and younger people being able to have these kind of conversations, which is why your young people, and I do as well, when someone rings me up, I'm like, what are you doing to me? Like, why are you ringing me? That's that's pressure now. I've got to have a conversation. And you know, and having a conversation it's very immediate. So you ask a question, I respond. I ask a question, you respond, and it's very, you know. But when it's texting, you know, I can't take in for granted what my words are doing to you.
That's right.
I can't see how my words are affecting you.
How are they being received?
Yeah, there's less at stake, really.
How do you do sarcasm over that?
Yeah, exactly.
Humor.
You have to put an emoji at the end of everything to make sure, like, you know, if I put a full stop at the end of something, I'm totally fine. You know, I'm happy. I'm like, you know, if I put a full stop on a message, people will go back for like, are you annoyed at me? I'm like, no, I just put a full stop, you know. And it's this, you know, this was happening. But it's not real time, because what's happening is if you give me a text message, I'm like, oh, it's the boss again. I'll just leave it. And especially if it's maybe like a big problem or whatever it might be, or you've got something, I've done something wrong, and you said, Ross, what has happened? Well, I can leave it an hour, and I can formulate an answer, and I can write it. Oh, no, maybe not. Where now, if you just came up to me and said, "What's this happened? You know, can you let me know what happened?" I have to quickly work out in my head to answer a question in a succinct way. And the younger generations are struggling with that because all their conversations, generally when they get home from school, is texting.
Yeah. So the majority of their
trying to get a young person to talk, like, sometimes can be quite hard to get more than one word out of them. Sometimes, it just depends what context you're in. And I don't want to paint a dim picture that all young people only reply with one word. That's been a bit kind of extreme. But generally, if you put young people in a room, they don't know what to do with themselves, because normally if they don't know what to do with themselves, they get their phone out, which we do if we're on the train station, or
it's a filler to any moment where nothing is happening.
We don't know how to be bored.
Yes.
And I think everyone, there was a kid at church on Sunday just like, oh no, I hate being bored. And you try and tell like a 5-year-old, 6-year-old kid why, that boredom is a okay thing. They're not gonna have it. And that's, let alone with a phone. And I do it all the time. Like, if I'm on my phone, then I know no one's going to interrupt me. Like, you don't interrupt someone on their phone because,
and there's conversations, aren't there, that we have about the importance of being present, and the phone can affect being present well, even when watching. Well, this was in our home situation, watching a TV program together. The phones are still on the side of the armchair, and if there's a snap that comes through, that's the priority, not what we're watching.
Well, this is a thing that happened the other day with. I came back from somewhere. I was coming back. Ollie and Hannah, that most people will know, and there's a podcast coming up with them, so you'll see them. They were talking to me about something, but I was on my phone texting someone, and I was kind of like, blah, blah, blah. And then 2 days later, I sent them a screenshot of potential of something that we were talking, like I thought they would be interested in, and they were like, Ross, we were literally talking about that on Saturday. And I was like, no, we weren't. He was like, yeah, we were. We literally said the exact thing to you, but you were on your phone.
Yeah, so you missed it.
I missed the conversation I had with Ollie and Hannah. I wasn't with them. I was you have to really think, like, if you're on your phone, you're not in the room. You are in some cyber world, and you're not present. So
yet I think there's an argument. People say, but everyone does it. It's normal. I'm just messaging. I'm still here. Yeah. It's almost become allowed, hasn't it? Yeah. And that's one of the tensions for how do we bring in a rule if there's a challenge. Yeah. To the phone always being in someone's hand. How do we rightly challenge well? How do we bring in a social culture in a group where we go, right, when we meet like this, and so we can explore that in a moment.
Yeah, well, ultimately, the social media phones are designed to be addictive. Like, these companies haven't put millions and billions of pounds into creating these phones and apps and colours and noises and all this. There's a lot of psychology that goes behind it as well, for us to not be addicted to it. So they are addictive, and that's why it's like a really important. If you're going to get your kid a phone when they're 13 or whatever, you're giving them something that is addictive. You have as a parent, you have to. It's a trade-off. My kid is going to be addicted to this phone, so now I need to parent them in a whole new way. But you're addicted to your phone. I'm addicted to my phone.
That's it.
Everyone's addicted, but to a certain extent, you just need to admit that kind of truth in the first place. Yes, I'm addicted to my phone. Very rarely is it let by my, not away from me. And if it is, then I panic a little bit because I think, where's my phone?
Yeah, we've become reliant, dependent. Fixated on the content that it gives. So if that's the situation, we're not proposing a banning of phone, of social media. There might be other issues that come with that. As Christians, we're called to live in the world, but not be of it. We're called to be distinct, countercultural. So what are some of the principles you've found helpful for how we do social media in our spiritual life, how we impact it so that it doesn't enslave us, but we can live as Jesus wants us to, and not with guilt.
Yeah, I think so. I used to be on Facebook, Twitter. I'm just remember it: Facebook, Twitter, and Snapchat and Instagram. And I gave up Snapchat a long time ago. So if you think Snapchat is a new social media, like a new phenomenon, it's not. When I was at university 10 years ago, I had Snapchat then, and then it kind of died off, and then somehow it had this resurrection and now it's just a Gen Z kind of social media. So I got rid of that a long time ago. Last January, for like this New Year's kind of a New Year, new me kind of oomph I had. I got rid of all. I don't know what I got rid of. I certainly got rid of Facebook and Twitter, and I thought it would just be for a month. But after like 3 or 4 days, certainly not having Twitter changed my headspace. that was and I'd never gone back to Twitter.
Amazing.
Partly I forgot my password, and I think it's been hacked because some people text me saying, "Ross, are you in cryptocurrency?" I'm like, no. So I think my Facebook, my Twitter. So if you have me on Twitter, where I'm looking, and you think I'm in cryptocurrency, I'm not in cryptocurrency. I just don't know my password, and I've forgotten it, and it's okay. I'm pretty chilled by it. Facebook I don't have, partly because again I was like, oh, should I get rid of it? But mainly it was down to FOMO, which is like the fear of missing out. All I was getting tagged in was these random videos, and it's like what you're getting updates from your mum, your auntie, and your grandma, and it was like, okay, I don't need that because I got them on WhatsApp. So that was another one that was able to go. And then this January, I've got rid of Instagram off my phone, so I don't have any social medias on my phone now, other than YouTube and WhatsApp. And I just have Instagram on my desktop.
Okay, yeah. So for you, it looked like removing temptation, reducing the amount of social apps.
Well, partly because also it wasn't just a spiritual thing that was affecting, it's a whole holistic thing that was affecting me. So I was wondering, why don't I have enough time to spend? Why am I finding myself working more? Like, youth work stuff I do at church. Why is I finding myself doing that, and I don't have enough time to spend time with God? I don't have enough time to go and play golf. I don't have enough time to go to the gym. And when I do, I don't have enough time to read. And when I do those things, I feel guilty for doing them. And then it came back to it like, well, how many hours am I spending on social media? And what's the first thing that goes when, time with God is the first thing that goes when you're trying to catch up time, because you go to yourself, well, God's always there. I can, I'll do it at lunchtime or whatever. That's the first thing that goes. And then your recreational stuff that is actually really important for you to do, like your golf or football or whatever it might be. Yeah. Then the gym, that was the next thing. And then the reading goes. And then you find yourself having to work all the time because it's what you get paid to do. You need to honor that. And so so it affected the whole spirit, holistically, everything, spiritual side, physical side. So just cutting them down slowly has helped. I'm still clocking up a fair few hours on my phone, but far less than that's what we should do by the end of it, is reveal our screen times.
We should
reveal our screen times.
So one of the things is managing it, sort of taking control of your phone, not letting it control you.
Well, absolutely.
So
because
reducing social media, maybe managing when you go on it, how you go on it, and that's personalised. So for you, in your work context, it might be different for the listeners.
Yeah, and that's why it's been nice to have it on my desktop, because I don't always have my desktop and my laptop out, and I can't just bring that out in the middle of the street when I'm waiting. I can't just bring it out in Costa, because often Costas don't have any internet, so it really makes you reel it in. So often I only really get time I only go on it really is in the evenings, and even then it's not as easy to flick, start doom scrolling. So it's just some of the things that I've done, and because of that I've had more time, to work properly. And then because I felt like I've done, I've honoured my work in some ways. I know this is a bit cack-handed sometimes, work from rest and stuff, but it's like, okay, no, I can go to the gym because I've saved an hour, 2 hours of my day because I haven't had it on Instagram, or Facebook, or Twitter. So there's actually a
benefit holistically to you from being a bit more careful and aware of that addiction, aware of that habit.
And also for thinking about Twitter, thinking about whatever this information overload. My brain wasn't because I was this kind of, again, this fear of missing out. Like, what if Twitter was where I got most of my news. I didn't go to Sky News. I just waited for Twitter to release the news. It's often quicker than anything else. And there's this fear of missing out. What if I get tagged in something? And actually, just letting go of Twitter alone freed my head. Yeah, so much more space. Just not to be filled with anything else, but just not filled with rubbish. I wasn't designed to have all those opinions, often which are not really deep opinions or thought through opinions. It's just one line clickbaits.
That's right.
Which would often rile me up.
Yeah, and they say they're a bit like an echo chamber with the algorithms. They end up sending you similar content, and so you're only hearing one side of a debate, not both, not the nuance.
And if you find me someone that spends an hour on Instagram Reels or YouTube Shorts or TikTok, that's one thing I've managed to keep away from TikTok, because I think that's the one thing I would get sucked into. And find me someone that actually feels great about life after an hour on Instagram. Not so much I feel great about life, but I feel good about myself. If I do an hour of YouTube Reels, I just feel sluggish. I feel like what a time wasted. But if I did an hour reading, if I went for an hour walk, if I did hour, I don't know, mowing the grass or whatever, hour at the gym, not once do I feel like, not very rarely do I ever feel sluggish after that.
Yeah. So
social media.
So you're talking about the social, recreational kind of mindlessness of social media. There might be many good ways of using it for sharing good content.
Yeah.
For encouraging people as a Christian.
I think,
why do we as a church use social media? Why do people for their businesses?
Yeah.
There are good ways of using it, but we do need to just put in boundaries.
I have someone on Instagram, one of my friends, we only communicate through sending reels to each other, like just funny reels, and of course that's sharing reels is a very shallow way of connecting. We have other ways of connecting as well. So I send reels to lots of people, tag people. Some of them are super funny, like memes are really funny, but they're not life-giving. And you have to kind of just be true, like, okay, Ross, this is a load of rubbish. Okay, it's funny, but it's a load of rubbish. And it's kind of this, I know we had discussed, I don't know if this is a good time to talk about this instantness of social media, and you sent me a picture.
Yeah, go on, talk about that.
Well, have you got it? Well, I've turned off my internet on my phone.
I will find the
image, get your phone out.
And then
but we're talking about like this kind of instant stuff. Like nothing good comes out of something that is instant. McDonald's, it tastes good, and it fulfills. Here we go. And McDonald's, it fulfills a purpose. Yeah. Fills the stomach. I know you're not a big fan of McDonald's, but your wife is a big fan, and your kids are big fans.
Kids more so.
Yeah, but it does fulfill a purpose. It fills my stomach, but that's it. And then what happens afterwards? That you do not feel great afterwards. It's so. I think one of these things we might can talk about again a little bit later is how do we stretch out this entertainment life that we're in? Because at the moment it's constant like dopamine shot entertainment rather than long form entertainment. Okay, in McDonald's is like that. It tastes good in the moment, but then it tastes like, oh man, I can't eat that again.
That's it.
Where if you had a really slow prepped meal, like slow cooked,
then
like beef, to the vegetarians, different taste to it. Me and you, we got a mutual love for coffee. We hate what? Instant coffee. You won't even have instant coffee when push comes to shove.
No.
But
if you're inviting
if anyone
me over,
tells
guys,
me that,
remember that.
If anyone tells me that instant coffee is better than 4 minute, nice percolated coffee, then I think you're lying to yourself.
So give us some of these examples of this image.
So some of the things. So it was like athletics, big thing in our church. Some people love their sport and the gym, especially our young people. So a slow traditional culture, they said here, is play a sport. So what you're doing, I'm going to training. So it's a good 2 hours out, with the travel. You're traveling with your parents, talking to them there. You're interacting with loads of people on the football pitch, or whatever it might be. You're getting involved in a sport. Takes a lot of, effort, but it's really good for you, especially when, score a goal like I did the other week.
Lovely feeling.
Whereas if you've got a video of, there's no video of me scoring the goal. We could put it here. But for a fast modern culture, which we love watching football. Yeah. You'd watch a sport. So I love watching the sport, watching the rugby, watching Arsenal win 5-0, 6-0, 4-0, 5-0. Happens occasionally at the moment. But the dopamine hit we get at the moment, hopefully our young people are not doing it, is gambling on a sport. So you still love your sport, but now you're getting a dopamine hit from the gambling. That's just one here. Think about music. Back in the day, you'd go and buy an album. Yeah. You'd have to, go to the shops and buy it. This is a slow traditional culture. Fast modern tracks, so that's like Spotify. That's kind of who'd have thought? You'd always think like, what could be possible? I reckon 10 years time, Spotify will be this redundant social media. So that's like fast modern culture. But the dopamine hit is TikToks. Like artists write songs now for TikTok. Wow, they need to think. Really? They need to kind of think. Well, how does this is not very TikTok-y song.
So we're talking short, 30 seconds.
30 seconds. Yeah. So what's another one we got? Relationships. Slow traditional culture, courtship and marriage. That's a very old word, courtship as well. This kind of, and this is probably slow traditional culture. I'm sure throughout the whole of time there's been fast modern culture and dopamine's hit. But here we have slow traditional culture, courtship and marriage, fast and modern culture, sexual freedom, and then dopamine culture, swipe on an app. So, it's, and I only saw this about an hour ago, and it's so true. It wasn't, we I don't know whether we can post it somewhere, but
we might be able to get it up on
instant,
the
nothing is
on the
good,
screen.
Necessarily worthwhile when it's instant. It fulfills a something, but it's never good for you.
So as we've kind of identified a number of the issues with social media, we've recognised that it can be used well, like many things in life, but there are challenges that come with that.
Yep.
How can we now plug in a bit more to what the Bible might say on this subject? We don't find the phrase social media in the Bible, but what biblical principles have helped you in this area and might help us as we think about our spiritual growth?
It's so hard for parents and for us because there's no, we can easily use that verse of the world, however it goes, be in the world but not of it. But then we use that as an excuse sometimes not to deal with situations that we're struggling with. And if you can't deal with the world that you're in, then don't, some of us are able to go into certain situations in the world and cope with it fine and not get dragged in. Some of us shouldn't. There'll be some things that we shouldn't go in on because we will get dragged into it. So, just a couple of passages here, like Ecclesiastes 3:1, something along the lines where there's a time for everything, and then it's got this long list. And, there is a time for everything in our worlds, and there's time for your phone. There's time for you to look at your emails. There's time for you to, catch up on your Snapchat or whatever it might be. But there's also, therefore, a time to put it down. There's a time to put it down. There's a time to go for a walk without it, which I sometimes do. But then there's always like the excuse, well, what if I
break your leg,
break my leg? What if a dog disappears? We can always find these excuses. Now, whenever have I fallen over, very rarely I fall over. Well, it hasn't happened. So you use always the excuses all the time. So what I've said here, go for a walk, with your phone at home, leave it in another room. So like if you go around someone's house for dinner or whatever, or you're inviting someone else, to your house for dinner, you've made the effort to go around theirs or them to around yours. Then stay in the room, but I'm not going on your phone. Leave your phone in another room. If it's out of sight, out of mind in some ways, and then you've got a watch on, and then it starts. You can see all your notifications on your watch now. I can see it all popping up on my phone now. Yeah. Delete the apps that most consume your time. Yeah. Sometimes you're going to have to be ruthless. At some point, you're going to need to say enough is enough, and delete the apps that consume most of your time. So for example, Instagram was consuming most of my time. I've made a compromise. Okay, so it's not on my phone. It's now just on my laptop on the website, and therefore it's far less now. Me spending time on Instagram. So those things. There's a time and a place for everything. And if you've made the effort to go around someone's house, or someone else has made the effort to go around yours, honor them by getting rid of your phone. Spend time with that person. And you might say, well, what if there's an emergency? If it's that emergency, they'll still get hold of you somehow. That's right. Rather than the constant backup. And that's about stewardship, isn't it? The use of our time is a demonstration of our desire to be holy, to be like God. And therefore, when we say no to some things, it's an active step towards God and other people. Okay, so there's one. You got one others? Was 1 Kings 19, 11 to 13. Is it Elijah? Well, Elijah on the mountain or Mount Carmel. Mount Carmel. Just testing you that your mountains. And it's this very famous passage where there's lots of noises, but he's not in the thunder, he's not in the earthquake, he's not in the fire, but he is in the whisper. And we don't, social media is not necessarily loud in a physical sense, unless your kids have probably all got AirPods in their ears at some point. I don't know, in the gym, there's always kids, they share AirPods now and share ear juice. It's just nasty. The attention that social media demands is really loud. And if we keep complaining that we can't hear God, then you need to kind of check in, like, okay, well, what is actually taking away your time? Because as children of God, we have a kind of God-given right to listen to God and to speak to God and hear from him, this communication. And I'm not saying I have like an audible connection with God, but, I never hear God in social media necessarily. Okay, through miraculous timing of me going through Reels, there might be some video that it's like, oh, that's quite cool. But most of the time I hear God is when I leave my phone at home and I go for a walk, or I'm in nature, or I'm speaking, or I'm reading the Bible, or if I'm praying or whatever it might be. So we really need to help our young people to learn how to be silent as well. I struggle to be in silent, often have music on, whatever it might, if I'm working. But sometimes I have to, sometimes you just have to force yourself to be silent, and you'll be quite surprised how much God wants to say. is not wants to say, but is saying. But we are just
listening.
Purposefully blotting out by the attention that's required
of us. So the importance of that spiritual discipline for our formation of silence and of listening, carving out time away for that. Yeah, really helpful.
Yeah,
like that. Good. Okay, so there's a few starters. What kind of, just as we begin to wrap things up, what might be some advice you give to youth, to parents, to those struggling in their use of social media, maybe that aren't youth or parents, you know, the broad section of society in this area? Are there a couple of final things you'd want to say?
Yeah, I suppose like for the youth, you know, and I said about like sometimes the youth trying to get me on their side and then the parents are trying to get me on their side and I have to try and hold the balance. I don't want to undermine the parents, certainly. But I suppose also like to say to the youth is, you know, your parents, I know they might be on you all the time about it, but they're really not the fun police. They're not dictators that are just trying to spoil your fun. You know, there's genuine, sincere care for them they have for you. I'm talking to the youth and I'm speaking to you. And they've been entrusted by God to raise you up in a holistic way, spiritually, I don't know what the other ones are, physically and mentally and emotionally. And actually, there is evidence to say that social media doesn't really contribute anything to those four things, if anything, in a detrimental way. So by the fact, you know, that's why they're on you, you know, on your case often, is because they know full well that it's not good for you. And they know full well it's not good for you because they probably also realise how much they have wasted their time on social media. I hate it when my young people are on social media and I'm on social media. Why do I hate it? Because I know full well how many hours I have wasted of my life on it. And I could have learned a new skill. I could have read a new book, whatever it might be. I could have gone and done a new hobby, and I have all these excuses why I don't do this and this.
Yeah, so it's sapping.
And it's actually
time.
Also we know how much time we wasted, and we just don't want you guys to do it as well.
And I think we went to a seminar, didn't we, a couple of months back by Glyn Harrison, talking about the critical moment for teenagers at the moment, given they've grown up with smartphones, and he used the term, the hermeneutical turn, was it?
Monological turn. So well, he was saying about his evidence now that kids shouldn't have phones. He wasn't necessarily himself, though. He's a very gifted psychologist, so I presume he would agree with it. Shouldn't have phones till they're 16. Certainly shouldn't have social media till they're 16, partly because of what it does to our development, our young people's development, as we spoke about, critical, conversational skills that they need, and trying to suss out arguments, you know, face to face is a lot more helpful than trying to suss out arguments over text. But you did mention this monological turn, and social media is a vacuum. It is an echo chamber. Yeah. So when you got these, your young people that are trying to form their identity in the teenage years, and their social media doesn't allow any other space for that. It doesn't say, well, this, it doesn't allow different areas, because this idea of monological turn is, from years and years past, there's three parts of your identity. There's your outward identity, what other people say about you, what your family used to do in the history, where your family was brought up, where they used to live, where you live, your brothers and sisters, what your parents did for a job, your all this kind of, you're more than just yourself. You've got this family identity, and then you've got your inward, so what you contribute to that family identity, and then you have upwards. Yeah. So what God says about your identity. And what's happened with social media is this inward turn, which effectively is sin. What is sin? It's an inward turn on yourself. I can try and solve it myself. Look away from the outside, look away from God, and try and solve it yourself. Do your own thing. And that's what social media has contributed to, is this inward thing. So actually, social media says, in some ways, depending on what echo chamber you get sucked into, is your parents can't be trusted. Your teachers can't be trusted. Your pastor can't be trusted. And guess what? God can't be trusted. Only you can trust yourself. And then that's the idea of this monological turn, where actually the young people are struggling with their identity, which affects their self-esteem, which affects how they fit into the family mold, which affects how they fit into church, because they've been told by echo chambers, whatever that might, whatever chambers they are, that they can't, only inward can be trusted. So if you... So basically, again, when you allow your kid on social media, you really have to be careful about this identity struggle that young people are going through, and we all go through it. But yeah, this idea that 16-year-olds, no, but I don't know. I don't know if it will ever happen.
That might kick off some discussion amongst parents and teenagers. But we've had a few ideas for youth, for parents.
Yeah, well, I've just said to the youth, you are most likely addicted to your phone. This is like I said, and the same to us as parents and me as well, that we are addicted to our phones. If you think that you've managed to, get one up on the people that have spent billions of pounds on making it addictive, then you're kidding yourselves. So you are addicted to your phones. Face that fact and and then try and control yourself. It does really help if you kind of accept that thing. Like, okay, this thing is trying to get me addicted, and it is addicting. So I'm going to try and do something about it. It does help rather than just say, no, I'm not addicted. Yeah. Because that's all addicts say.
Self-awareness, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's really important.
Parents, I just said take a hard look at yourself. You cannot bang the drum to your kids about phones if you are on your phones during like I know a lot of people have no phones at the table at dinner time. I think that's it's a great one. Watching movies or whatever it might be, I'm a sucker for that. Like something, if I find a movie a little bit boring, again it's this idea of long entertainment that we're struggling with. I'll go on my phone, whatever it might be. But also, if you use an excuse, but it's work, or I'm just checking some emails because it's work, it's not a good enough excuse. You can't bang the drum to your kids about catching up with their friends when you're trying to catch up on your emails in front of them. Either go into a different room, wherever it might be, or you only get a certain amount of hours between the school days.
That's it. So boundaries are just key
and
for
parents. You've got to lead the way. You can't. You're not going to gain any respect. I don't know if your kids have ever called you out on it. Like I get called out on it all the time.
And I've definitely said, but this is a work
message. Pastoral.
And, therefore, it trumps whatever.
You're doing. As the dad, you do have the top trump all the time.
I use it.
Exactly. Yeah.
However, I need to look at what that looks like to them, not just.
And who calls you out the most?
Probably the kids.
The youngest.
Probably the youngest. She would love a world without phones. She hasn't got one.
Yeah, but once she gets the phone,
it could change.
It's all going to change. What else we said? We said about those that just want to. We said about leave it as long as possible. Like, I know, lots of parents are holding on for dear life to, and that's really, I think that's really important. Try and hold on, like to white knuckles.
And I think the thing that I've found with this is also once we do trust our kids with phones and we've set good boundaries and we're aware of the risks and we're aware of the positives as well, but we're very much aware of the dangers. We then go, right, we want to parent our kids. We want to disciple one another or mentor others, being wise, not just knowing there's stuff out there, but being wise. And if we can be wise, then we can be courageous and trust others and go, like, let's exercise wisdom, and godly wisdom in this space.
And you have to trust your young person. Like, if you don't trust your young person, then, okay, maybe it's not the right time to give them social media. If you do trust your young person, then I think it's good to start your boundaries really strict. It's a lot easier to start strict and let them loose rather than go, whatever. And then you have to reel them in. And as often the parents, you trust your kids. You just don't trust. You don't know the other friends. You don't trust the other numpties that are on social media that can, talk to your young person. Could be bullying your young person, could be sending them pictures which you never know about because it's Snapchat and they just disappear like that. So it's not, you don't trust your kid, because if you don't trust your kid, then maybe you shouldn't give them social media in the first place.
That's right.
But if you do,
wisdom's
then it's
learned. It's gradual. We grow in it, don't we? So, okay, so some really helpful things there, and maybe that sparked off some questions that people have got. Maybe there's other resources, books, websites you could recommend as a next step for people.
Well, I've just got 2 books that I want to read. So I haven't read them myself. It's I don't know how we do this, but a book called Glow Kids.
Right.
And you can imagine what on the screen, it's just like this kid on the front cover with a
shining face.
Fine, and then The Chaos Machine. So the Glow Kids is by Nicholas Kardaras. I don't know how to say the same. And The Chaos Machine is by Max Fisher. Okay. And the Chaos Machine is just about social media and the psychology behind it. And it's not, it's that idea that it's not there just for fun. No. It's there to grab you and keep you. And
what we'll probably do is in the description of this podcast, put a few links to books or websites or resources that we find helpful. I remember reading one called TechWise.
I did see that
helpful.
One though, yeah.
I can't remember the author. Can you remember him?
No,
Andy Crouch, possibly.
Maybe, yeah.
TechWise, I wouldn't agree with everything.
No.
We don't in most books that we read, but there's a lot of really helpful principles in there.
Yeah.
So massive topic. We've started a good discussion, and hopefully our listeners have been finding that helpful. Thank you so much.
That's all right. Thanks for having me
Ross,
again.
for giving us your time, your thoughts, your experience, and your wisdom into that. If anything that has been raised that you want to follow up, do feel free to get in touch with us at Barton Church, either Ross or myself, and check out the resources that accompany this podcast. But thank you for listening. Thank you for being with us on Postcards from Antioch. And we hope you have a great rest of the day, rest of the week, and look out for our next episode when it comes up. Thank you, and God bless.